Most of us don't lose loved ones suddenly. We just put it off until later. One phone call, one visit, one conversation, and that, later, slips away. Later is convenient, now is scary, but only, now, saves us. Don't wait for a signal. Don't wait for the end. Just go. Just call. Just say it, while you still can. I thought he would wait forever. He called and waited. He waited 147 days. And then, he stopped. One click and you're with us together until we hit our first 1,000. He called, not every day, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, but always with the same question, when are you coming to visit? I almost always answered the same way, Dad, I can't make it right now. Next time, this summer, after this project, during vacation, after my time off, when things calm down, pause, I understand, next time then, and he never got upset. Never, he just accepted it, as if he had some built-in function that said, okay, your life is more important. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't the life of the party. He wasn't someone you'd frame and post on Instagram with the caption, my best friend. He was a father, too simple, too quiet, too old-fashioned. He didn't know how to use Zoom, didn't understand what a startup was, never read my column on Medium, but he knew when I called not because I missed him, but because my conscience was bothering me. The last time we saw each other was 7 years ago. 7. I don't even remember what he was wearing then. I only remembered that we sat in the kitchen and argued. He said I had become too proper, and I replied that he was too out of touch with life. He just nodded and made tea. Since then, there were only phone calls. He called more often than I did. He knew when my birthday was. I didn't always remember when his was. He asked how I was doing. I said, fine. And then, listen, sorry, I'm in the subway, in a meeting, at the doctor, with someone, and I'd hang up. Then a girlfriend appeared. Work started getting stressful. We rented a new apartment. Debts began piling up. Then my son was born. All of these were important things. And all of these were happening, now. But my father was always, later. I even said it out loud once, he's not in a hurry. He's not going anywhere. He didn't argue. He just waited. One day he called and said, I'm in the hospital. Nothing serious, just my heart acting up. I was listening, but already running through tomorrow's meetings in my head. Are you okay? Yeah, just lying here. The TV is terrible here. And the soup is cold. Should I bring you something? No, no need. I just wanted to hear your voice. Listen, I'll call you back later, okay? I never called back. A month later, Mom sent me a photo. Dad at home, lying on the couch, with an oxygen tube in his nose. I gave it a heart emoji. And wrote, how is he? She replied, he's alive. He misses you. He's counting days, drawing X's on the kitchen wallpaper. How many days without you? I read this twice, then closed the chat, went to a meeting, and in the evening, I was just tired, went to bed. In the morning it was too late to call. When another 2 months passed, I said out loud for the first time, I should go visit. My girlfriend asked, when? I fell silent. I didn't have an answer. As if there was no date inside me that would actually work. And I said again, later. 3 weeks later, Mom called me. She was crying, and I understood immediately, without explanations, without words, as if I had known all along that I wasn't postponing a visit, I was postponing a funeral. If I were given 1 minute, I wouldn't ask for forgiveness. I would just come over, sit next to him, say, I remember how you made tea. I remember how you never got upset. I remember how you asked, when are you coming? And I thought it was just small talk. But it was a cry for help. And he didn't scream. He just disappeared, quietly, just like he lived. The first days after the phone call, I felt nothing. Nothing at all. As if everything inside me had been turned off. I arrived at the funeral. Late. The casket was already closed. Mom said he had asked not to drag things out. Don't wait for him, he's busy. Even in death, he didn't want to interfere with my life. I stood by the fresh earth and thought about silly things. Why is the grass so short? Why isn't it raining hard, but just sort of lazily? Why is everyone silent? I didn't cry, not because I was strong. Because I still didn't understand what had happened. Because I was still living in, I'll call later, mode. As if all this was just a strange scene and I would leave and hear again, "So, when are you coming to visit?" A week later I returned home. Life went on. My child wanted cartoons. My wife wanted me to buy milk. At work, reports, meetings, deadlines. Nobody asked how I was doing. And I didn't tell anyone. Everything looked normal, except for one thing, the silence. Before, he used to call. Sometimes at the wrong time. Sometimes at inconvenient moments. But now, he didn't call. And this wasn't empty space. This was piercing silence that rang like something inside my skull. Every morning I woke up feeling like I hadn't done something, had forgotten something. Then I would remember, and my chest would tighten. Literally. Once I was driving and just stopped at a traffic light. Not because it was red. Because I suddenly realized I would never hear his voice again. I tried to do something. I opened old recordings, audio messages where he said, "Hello, this is Dad. I found your school notebooks here." A random message. His voice, warm. I listened to it 6 times in a row. On the 7th, I turned it off. And in fury threw the phone against the wall. Not because he was gone, but because I never came. In the following weeks, I tried to be good. I started playing with my son more often. I cooked dinner, gave flowers to my wife, even called old friends, as if I hoped, if I become better, this will somehow compensate. But no, all the good things don't cancel out one thing. I wasn't there when he was waiting. And no amount of now can patch up that hole that appeared in my chest because of all the laters. Mom called several times. I answered, but spoke coldly, dryly, quickly. I was afraid to hear her talk about him. Afraid she would say, "He asked about you," until the very end. Because that would be the point after which I wouldn't get up. A month later I drove to their house. Alone. Mom was at the dacha. I just opened the door with my key, walked to the kitchen, sat on that same chair where he used to make tea, and froze. Everything was in place. The mug, the ashtray, the newspaper with crosswords, and the wall with wallpaper. I walked over. On the light surface, X's. Small, faded, crooked. I counted 17, then more, and more. Total 147 X's, 147 days when he waited. And marked each one. Then, empty space. I ran my finger over the last X. It was drawn with a weak hand, slightly trembling, and I collapsed right onto the floor, clutched my head, and howled. Not cried, howled, like a wounded animal, like a person who understood he no longer has the right to later. After I collapsed in the kitchen, next to the wall with X's, I didn't get up right away. I lay there for a long time, stared at the ceiling, and suddenly realized that I wasn't afraid that he had died, but that he left thinking I had forgotten him. The next morning I woke up with one thought: I have to explain to him. To myself. To him. To anyone. I sat down and wrote a letter. "Dad, I don't know if you're reading this, but if you knew how sorry I am. I wasn't ready. I thought you would always be there. I thought there was more time. I was always thinking about myself. And you were just waiting. Thank you for waiting. I'm sorry I didn't come." I printed this letter, put it in an envelope, drove to the cemetery, left it at his grave, and left. But there was no relief. The next days were gray. I tried to work, smile at my son, live, but inside it felt like something was crunching, like a floor under an old carpet. Fragile, ready to cave in. My wife said once, "You've become different. Like someone turned you off." I didn't answer, because I knew the truth. Nobody turned me off. I pressed pause myself. When he called, I was silent. When he waited, I was late. When he died, I felt nothing. And now, I felt everything. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I opened his old drawer that Mom had given me after the funeral. Inside were a stack of letters he had written but never sent, a drawing I had made in 4th grade, the two of us fishing, and a small voice recorder. I turned it on. He was talking into it. "There was heavy rain today. I don't know when Alex will come, but let him know I love him, even if he won't say it out loud." I had a panic attack. A real one, with pressure, numbness in my hands, ringing in my ears. I lay down on the floor, closed my eyes, and thought one thing: I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't even deserve him talking about me like that. Then I started doing something strange. Every evening I would sit at my laptop and write letters to him. A new letter, every day. About how my day went. What my son said. What happened at work. It was stupid. It was meaningless. It was unbearably necessary. After a couple of weeks I went to a psychologist. Not because I believed in therapy, but because I knew a little more and I would break. I told everything, without drama, without tears, as it was, about the calls, about the exes, about the voice recorder. The psychologist listened and said only one phrase, "You don't need to forgive your father." I'm not angry at him. I know. You need to forgive yourself. But how? How do you forgive yourself for not being there when a person waited for you until the very end? How do you forgive yourself for not just not making it in time, but not wanting to make it in time? At one of the next sessions I brought the last letter and read it out loud. Dad, I'm sorry you loved me more than I deserved. Sorry I didn't know the price of the word later. But if you can hear me, know this, I don't say later anymore. I say now, and I do it. That night I sat at the table, gathered old audio recordings, letters, photos, and started making a website. Not for him, for others, for those who also postpone things, for those who think they still have time. I named it what I never said to him out loud, I love you. And I'm sorry it's too late. I launched the website at night. No design, no logo, no marketing. Just white background, black text. On the main page, one letter. That one, the last one, I love you, and I'm sorry it's too late. And a button. If you also have such a letter, write it. I wasn't expecting anything. This wasn't a project, not a mission. It was a way to survive another day. The next day, silence. After 24 hours, the first letter. I also didn't come. I sat by the phone but didn't call. And then, the hospital. And I was late. Then the second. Then the third. After a week, there were 94 of them. Letters, voices, guilt similar to mine, and they all said one thing, I thought I had time. I didn't respond, I just read, each letter, like a scar. Someone else's story, like a mirror. And suddenly I understood, my pain isn't unique. My mistake is widespread. A month later one guy sent an audio message. He said, I wanted to die. I thought I couldn't live with this anymore. But then I found your website. And realized I'm not alone. I was sitting and listening to this in my car. It was morning. I was holding coffee and my hands were shaking. I saved someone. Me, who couldn't forgive myself. Me, who was late. Me, who said later too many times. I started writing articles about postponing, about fear, about words we don't say. I started appearing on small podcasts. People wrote, "Thank you, you said what I was afraid to say to myself." But one comment broke me. You became a hero, but still, why didn't you call? Why didn't you go? What could be more important? I read it and felt everything inside me compress. Because I was selfish, because I was afraid, because it was convenient for me, because I simply didn't want to be around my dying father. I turned off the laptop, went to the shower, and didn't come out for an hour. That evening I returned to the cemetery, sat on the grass nearby, took out the voice recorder, and said, Dad, people tell me I'm good now, that I help people, but I don't know if you would forgive me. I don't know if you would look at all this and be proud. Or turn away. I don't know, but I'm here. I'm sitting nearby, not rushing anywhere. I just came. I didn't hear an answer. But for the first time, the quiet air didn't suffocate. The silence became warm, like his voice in childhood. In 2 months the website collected 10,000 letters. It started being called, the Archive of the Unsaid. I started getting TV invitations. I declined, because I understood. I don't want to be the face of tragedy. I want to be the voice of choice. The voice of those who will decide and act. Before it's too late. 6 months passed. I still wrote letters. Not every day anymore, but I wrote. Not because I was waiting for an answer. Because in these letters I was returning myself. Slowly, in pieces, through pain. Mom called once. I found your first letter. The one you left at his grave. And? I left it on the nightstand. Why? Because he wouldn't have thrown it away. I didn't answer. I just stood in the kitchen and looked out the window. At the children on the playground. At the leaves falling from the trees. And only one thought in my head. Why do you have to lose something to start feeling? Sometimes I read other people's letters on the website and couldn't breathe. I didn't say goodbye. I thought, she'll be there tomorrow. But she didn't come. I wanted to say I was proud of him, but I was afraid it would sound cheesy. I was driving, already left, and got a message, too late. I understood that pain isn't a tragedy. Pain is an opportunity. It comes when you can still change. When you can still call. Come, say. Shame comes later. When there's no one left. When the voice is only in memory. When no one makes tea anymore. One day my son came up and said, "Dad, can I ask you something?" Of course. Was your dad good? I froze, then nodded. Yes, he was good, very good. Why did you never tell me about him? I got down on my knees, hugged my son, and said, because I was silent for too long. But now I'll talk. And I told him, about the exes, about the voice, about the tea, about how you can run your whole life, and not make it to where they waited for you most of all. The next day we drove to the cemetery. My son laid flowers, silently, then asked, "Does he know now that you love him?" I answered, "Now, yes." He wasn't afraid of losing his father. He was afraid of seeing him weak. And then, saw himself broken.